In this week's episode of From, we had four main stories that were unfolding and getting the main focus. This was Victor and his hunt for Jasper, Fatima and the massive revelation about her pregnancy, Tabitha with her seeing the children, and also her connection to the stick figures in the forest. And also Jade and his desire to try and solve the puzzle which had presented itself due to the bottle tree. With the ending of this episode doing what From does best and making us have more questions than answers, let's try and decipher what the episode meant and where it could be going next. So let's get into it. Here is From Season 3 Episode 6, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Victor's hunt for Jasper. So right now, it seems like there are two things in Fromsville that are claiming to be able to save the people. The first is Victor and the fact that he was looking for Jasper the puppet, as he felt it would be able to help them because he once overheard a conversation that it had with Christopher about a secret place. And the second is the Kimono woman who appeared in a Polaroid that was taken of Fatima, and she said to Elgin that she'd be able to save everybody if she let her help. Little is known about the lady, but we're starting to see her appearing a lot more, which shows that she's definitely going to have great importance to the story, but we'll get to that in a little bit. With regards to Victor, he went down into the tunnels because he wanted to find Jasper. In the early episodes of the season, we saw that Victor was almost lurking in the background and just watching the behavior of the town and everything that was going on. And it was by doing that which made him realize that things were starting to feel like what they did several decades ago on the night where everybody in the town was slaughtered other than him. The night that he lost his mother and sister. This is what made him realize that he wanted to go and find Jasper, because other than himself, it was the only thing that survived from that night. Obviously, Jasper is only a puppet, but Victor believed that the monsters or the town was able to possess it and gave it the ability to talk. This is what we saw happen with Victor and his father throughout the entirety of the episode. Henry has a large sense of guilt inside of him over the fact that he feels as though he let his son and his family down because he gave up thinking that they were alive. So that was the main reason as to why he went down into the tunnels with Victor, because he didn't want to lose him again after only just getting him back. Henry actually spoke at a volume whilst he was down there, and it triggered the creatures to wake up. Henry saw something that belonged to his wife, which is why it got such an emotional reaction from him. When Henry asked why they had it to Victor, his justification was that they just like to take things. But something that could be connected to that is the fact that when the monsters spoke, Henry was concerned over her voice. He was cut short before he was able to finish his sentence when talking about the creature's voice. But what if the monster was speaking in the voice of Miranda, and that's why Henry looked so shocked? The way that she spoke to Victor when she basically said that if he kept coming down there, they'd have to keep him there. It not only showed that they were doing their best to deliberately lure Victor and Henry deeper, but it was also spoken in a way that was quite authoritative and in the tone that a parent might speak to a child like. It's no coincidence that Miranda's piece of clothing was on display when they got there. The creatures knew what they were doing. A couple of episodes back, Victor described the boy in white as his friend when he was younger. We know that the boy in white is an important figure in the town, so what if Victor is somebody that's almost off limits for the creatures? As they didn't just tear into him or his father whilst he was down there, they had an approach that was particularly interesting. When Jasper does eventually speak, or if he does, I'm hoping we'll find out more about the night that the entirety of the town ended up getting wiped out. Henry looked rather concerned when Victor said that Jasper was going to speak because he didn't believe that it was going to happen, so we're just going to have to wait and see. Tabitha. The entire episode opened up with Tabitha and Jim arguing, and during this argument, Jim brought up the fact that Tabitha once wanted a divorce after what happened with Thomas when he died. There was a moment in this argument where it got put to bed when the screeching from the creatures started coming from the distance in the dead of night. This was a moment that I actually quite liked because in that very scene, up until then, we were almost just watching a couple argue, and that's exactly how they probably felt. But it was when the screeching kicked in where they realized, and we also did too, that the argument was the last of their problems and there were actually bigger things to focus on. Tabitha was feeling guilty over the fact that she felt as though she didn't do enough when she was in Maine. Something that I kind of understand, but realistically, what could she have done without sounding like a lunatic to the authorities? But with Jade finding out that there was another bottle tree that had the exact same numbers that were inside of the bottles, he started working on solving the puzzle of what it all meant, so Tabitha went along to help. This was after she saw the children in her home and they were saying Ankui to her. We're definitely seeing Ethan and Julie acting differently towards Tabitha since she returned, something that has taken me by surprise just a little bit. Ethan is more reserved and Julie seems to want to be around her father more than her mother, which is saying something. During the closing moments of the episode, Tabitha was with Jade, and whilst they were together, she saw a drawing of one of the dolls that was on his desk. These are the stick dolls that we saw all around the forest when the group went there to get the fresh crops. This was when Tabitha revealed to Jade that she'd actually seen that doll in 3 red stones before. When she was younger, she used to have a recurring nightmare that would occur, and she'd be in that very forest that everybody had been going to, and there was a monster-like being that would get her. This creature that she saw in her nightmare must be the very thing that we heard when Kenny and Jim were inside of the hutch during the night. The dolls obviously have some importance, and we don't know if they work like the talismans, but Jade broke one by mistake when Christy injured her foot, so whatever chain of protection was around that forest, it's probably no longer there. This essentially reveals to us that the town has an even stronger connection than we originally thought. If this was appearing in Tabitha's dream from when she was little, that very much means that it's always been the plan for her to end up in Fromsville no matter what pathway she took. We knew that she was an important figure anyway because she's essentially stepped into the shoes of Miranda, but it was always her destiny to end up there, dating all the way back to when she was younger. This gives us way more questions about the power and entity that runs this town and the decision making that goes on. The dates in the bottles is something that I think is also going to be important and connect to Tabitha too. Could it be years people arrived, years people tried to escape, or years where a mass turnover happened? Or could it be as simple as a code that provides a destination for when you go through the faraway tree if the town permits you to do so? I'm hoping that's a puzzle that we will get figured out soon, but I somehow don't see that happening. Fatima. This episode finally confirmed what many of us were thinking. Fatima isn't in fact carrying a baby, and she's acting strange for a completely different reason. Because of the ambulance coming into the town on the night where Nikki died, on board the vehicle was an ultrasound machine. So Christy used it on Fatima, and it was here where we saw that she had nothing inside of her. This to me makes me feel like the theory around Fatima potentially turning and changing into one of those creatures could be a possibility. My 2 main theories with Fatima were either it would play out like the movie and book Rosemary's Baby, and she'd be carrying a creature for the monsters, or she'd be turning into a creature, and I very much think that it's the latter one now. I'm also starting to wonder if the Kimono woman is connected to Fatima in some kind of way. She appeared in the photo alongside Fatima when Elgin was looking at it, and she also appeared after the events that transpired with the crow when Fatima was going to have a tarot reading done. Fatima was worried that people would look at her differently if they found out that she was eating spoiled crops, just like she felt Ellis was. But with nobody truly knowing what it is that she's been going through and her not actually carrying a baby, all of the side effects that she's been having, such as regularly being sick, only eating rotten food and the blood of a human, and also losing her teeth, it's screaming of a transformation. I kinda hope that we see her turning into one of those creatures. Randall. Within this episode, Randall made the decision that he wasn't going to stay on the bus on his own anymore because he pretty much felt alone and scared. At least, that's the impression that he was giving off. He compared his situation to Mariel in having somebody with her, and there was a sense of jealousy there. This is a side to Randall that we haven't really seen before, so I'm starting to wonder if it's genuine or not. We know that Randall is having visions and hallucinations, something that he views as being more difficult than dying, and Julie is also having hallucinations in terms of what she hears. So this episode saw the both of them starting to get closer with one another. Randall clearly blames Boyd for what happened to him with the creatures as he felt abandoned, and rightfully so. Randall was alone with those creatures for quite a while, so I'm wondering if they allowed him to live because there's some ulterior motive that he's going to be carrying out. He was left for dead by the people of the town, and I don't think he's going to forget that. Randall doesn't strike me as the person that would just up and move like how he did without a valid reason. He enjoys being on his own. That's something that we've seen with the character, so it's something that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on. My review of the episode. I thought this was a good episode in the season. It built upon the previous episode well, and it felt like there was clear development to the story. The scene where we were following Vic and Henry through the tunnels, that was one where I was waiting in anticipation and questioning if something would end up jumping out, so it had me locked in for the duration of it. One character that I really liked the arc of in this episode was Donna. She was clearly mourning the loss of Dale, and she took it upon herself to cover him up and give him some kind of dignity in burying the wall behind some stones. She also provided an ear and a word of advice to Tabitha, which I think actually really helped her. So it was actually a nice way to see Donna. Boyd might not be the person that the town is breaking, but after Donna's breakdown a couple of episodes back and then now losing Dale, it feels like she could be on the cusp of breaking. I'm also glad that we finally got to see Fatima's arc develop and it not just be about her eating rotten food. I think now that we know that she's not got a baby, we might see a rapid increase in the speed in which she starts changing. Honestly, I can't believe we've only got 4 episodes left of this season. We've passed the halfway point and we're about to embark on the final stretch. We're not really much closer to getting any answers, and it's starting to feel like we might not really get any answers until season 4, when it eventually comes out, if it gets greenlit. Also, I'm starting to miss the creatures. I want the next episode to have them in the town again because they often end up stealing the episode when that's the case. Those scenes are just so horrific to watch. So, there you have it. From Season 3, Episode 6, Ending Explained.